The film begins in a place like a desert, and we see a woman named Catherine arriving on a horse. Shortly after, she meets a young boy named Edward. She thanks him for the horse and asks him if he can ride it today. Edward points to a huge, rusted ship buried in the sand, but Catherine shows him a small boat they could use. The boy tells her that the boat is broken. Moments later, he suddenly turns into a monster and runs to escape. As soon as Catherine sees this, she presses sense a device in her hand, and the scene quickly shifts to a lab where we find her connected to a strange device. Here, we understand that this world has special technology that allows doctors to enter the minds of patients being treated in experimental labs. Catherine is actually a psychologist who's been working with Edward, who is in a coma for a while. To help him wake up, she enters his mind regularly, trying to gain his trust and free him from the barriers trapping him inside. After the session ends, Catherine takes off the suit she was wearing and leaves the lab. There, she sees her bosses, Dr. Henry and Dr. Miriam. Edward's billionaire parents are the ones funding this technology, but they are now very frustrated because the experiment has been ongoing for 18 months without any real success. They believe Edward should be taken to a regular hospital, and that what Catherine sees with their son might just be hallucinations. In another place, we see a man named Carl arriving with a dog named Valentine at an abandoned building in an isolated area. Inside the building, he looks at a glass tank filled with water with a girl floating in it. Suddenly, the girl's body starts convulsing and shaking until she dies in the end. At the same time, Dr. Miriam informs Catherine that Edward's parents are determined to stop the treatment, but they manage to convince him to extend the deadline for 6 more months. Catherine discusses with her a new treatment method for Edward, saying she wants to let him enter her mind. Naturally, Dr. Miriam rejects the idea because it would be dangerous for both of them, but Catherine insists, saying the boy lives in a sick world, and the best way to help him is to show him a different environment. We return to Carl, who turns out to be a serial killer. We see him taking the girl's body and putting it in his van, then driving away. Later at his house, he places her on a metal table and uses bleach to make her skin completely white, like a toy doll. Then, he hangs himself with hooks piercing his skin and watches a recording of the girl's final moments as she dies in the water. The next day, a body is found under a bridge, so a federal agent named Peter arrives with his team to investigate the matter. They find an iron collar around her neck, revealing she's not the first victim, as they found 6 other women killed in the same gruesome way. Peter is very angry about this new crime, because he's been chasing the sadistic killer for a long time and desperately wants to catch him. In another place, we see Carl watching his new victim, Julia, and carefully planning the right moment to attack. Meanwhile, the FBI team conduct precise investigations, and soon they find a dog hair on the victim's body. The shock is that the hair belongs to a rare albino German Shepherd. We go to Julia, who is in a parking lot, and suddenly feels she hit something with her car. She gets out a check and finds a dog Valentine stuck under the rear wheel. She worries she might have hurt him. As she tries to comfort the dog, Carl sneaks up behind her and suddenly attacks. Later, the police learn of Julia's disappearance, which puts them in a tougher situation. They start searching intensively for the albino dog and a van with the same tire marks found near the bridge. At the same time, Peter visits Julia's house to talk to her family and learns she was supposed to get married soon and travel afterward. Peter gets a call from his colleague saying a dog breeder gave them information about selling an albino German Shepherd puppy to a strange man, along with the suspect's address. With this address, the police move immediately to the location. On the way, they review the man's file, named Carl Rudolph, and strangely, he has no criminal record or even a gun license. We go to Carl, who is relaxing in his bathtub when he suddenly has seizures and starts shaking. He stumbles through the house looking for medicine, but eventually collapses unconscious on the floor. Shortly after, the police arrive at the house and are shocked to find Carl passed out in the kitchen. They search every part of the house but find no trace of Julia, though they do find the albino dog. Carl is taken to the hospital, and Peter goes down to the basement of the house, discovering large quantities of bleach bottles on the shelves. He also finds children's toys arranged strangely and twisted, along with chains hanging from the ceiling above a table with a Carf Company logo. Then, the investigator turns on the TV and is horrified to see a recording of the girl's death, the one who was in the tank. At the same time, we return to Julia, who we find locked in the same glass cage, screaming and begging for help, but to no avail. Then, Peter meets a doctor examining Carl, who discovers he suffers from a severe type of schizophrenia that started when he was still a fetus in his mother's womb. The disease remained dormant until a specific trauma triggered it. The doctor explains that Carl likely experienced a trauma related to water, but the problem is that Carl will never wake up on his own, and no medicine can revive him. Peter insists there's a woman trapped in a room about to drown completely, and they must save her immediately. Since Carl is the only one who knows her location, they have no choice but to wake him, or Julia will die. Here, we learn that the killer leaves his victims locked in this cage for 40 hours before the water opens by an automatic timer, meaning the police don't have much time. When the doctor hears this, he gets an idea and takes Peter to the facility where Catherine works and introduces her. Peter explains a dangerous situation and asks Catherine to enter Carl's mind to find Julia's location before it's too late. When the board understands the gravity of the situation, they approve this emergency procedure, and even Edward's parents agree to pause his treatment temporarily. However, the final decision is in Catherine's hands, who explains that a schizophrenic patient cannot distinguish between reality and imagination. Even if the killer is aware of reality, it will be distorted. She says she might gain his trust for the plan to succeed, but that usually takes months. When Peter insists that time is short and shows her a video of the previous victims, Catherine reluctantly agrees to help. After that, the team starts preparing for the operation, and Catherine explains to them that Carl was hanging himself with those chains because he enjoyed the feeling of weightlessness, similar to floating in water. At the same time, Dr. Henry explains to the investigators that the device uses a neurotransfer system that maps the brain and sends a signal to Catherine's brain. A chip implanted in her arm allows her to return to reality at any time by pressing it. Shortly after, the session begins, and both Carl and Catherine enter a deep sleep with their nervous systems connected. Catherine enters his mind and sees a scene of young Carl being baptized in a small lake by several adults. Then, she finds herself in a dark tunnel and glimpses a black dog shaking blood off its body. After that, she sees young Carl climbing a huge ladder. She quickly follows him. They reach a room with a large horse in the center, and the boy is hiding in a corner. Catherine starts talking to young Carl, trying to gain his trust, but he keeps looking at his watch and suddenly pushes her away from a horse. At that moment, sharp blades fall from the ceiling and cut the horse into pieces. Catherine realizes the boy was trying to protect her, but what's stranger to her is that the horse still seems alive despite being completely cut up. After this incident, young Carl runs, and Catherine follows him until she enters a room. There, she is horrified to see cages with women turn into mechanical dolls. The sight terrifies her, but suddenly, a huge woman emerges from one of the cages and attacks her. The woman drags Catherine to a hall where a huge man sits on a throne, hooked by chains in his back with purple fabric flowing out. This man is a demonic version of Carl. He approaches Catherine and asks her where she came from. The scene terrifies Catherine, so she quickly presses a sensor device and returns to reality. In another place, Peter is investigating Julia's disappearance and gets news that Catherine has returned, so he rushes to the lab. Catherine is extremely frightened and says she's never seen anything like this before. Dr. Henry advises her to rest because if her mind believes what happened inside is real, she might get lost there and never return. The scene then returns to Julia, where the first streams of water start reaching her. The water comes in intervals, spraying the room periodically before it fills completely and the victim drowns. In another place, Peter finds Catherine sitting by Edward's bed, where she explains the boy's condition. She tells him that when she enters someone's mind, she sees everything, even the parts people try to hide. Catherine no longer wants to feel what she saw in Carl's mind again. She reveals that the man created a distorted kingdom in his mind and crowned himself king, allowing himself to do anything. When Peter hears this, he tells her he used to work as a prosecutor and once had to release a child predator due to lack of evidence. That night, they found a man in his living room with a girl dismembered next to him, her heart placed in the fridge. This incident affected Peter deeply, to the point that he left his job and joined the FBI to catch lunatics like these. Catherine then says there's a good side to Carl, a side that still sees itself as a child. She believes if she can reach that side, he might reveal Julia's location. After this conversation, Catherine prepares for the second session, but first asks them to bring the killer's dog, Valentine. Valentine enters the room and licks Carl's hand, which might trigger a positive response in him. After a while, Catherine finds herself inside the glass cage, so she quickly runs and opens its lid. She flies through tunnels and reaches a hall where Valentine the dog meets her and takes her to a house. There, she sees young Carl washing dishes. She gives him something like a mirror as a gift and tells him to reflect light with it when he needs help. The boy takes it excitedly, but Catherine accidentally touches a plate, causing it to break. The terrified boy quickly hides her in a closet, and immediately, Carl's father enters and yells at him for breaking the plate. The man starts beating the boy, and Catherine stands helplessly, unable to intervene. She also sees other moments of abuse Carl suffered as a child, which cause irreparable psychological trauma. In the next scene, Catherine sees adult Carl standing by the bathtub with the dead girl's body. He tells her she's his first victim and asks what she's doing there. She says she wants to help him, but he doesn't believe her and tells her about the first time his schizophrenia appeared. It turns out it was the day of his baptism when his father forcibly submerged him in water. Carl thought he was drowning, but everyone just watched and no one helped. Then, Catherine directly asks him about Julia's location, but he gets angry and refuses to tell her. He goes to hide in a dark corner, and soon, the demonic version of Carl appears and attacks her, putting an iron collar around her neck. In the real world, the doctors notice something went wrong and discover that Catherine is now trapped inside and can no longer end the dream. When Peter sees this, he volunteers to enter her mind, and despite lacking the necessary training, he has no choice but to take the risk. Peter prepares to enter Catherine's mind, and Dr. Miriam advises him that to wake her, he must say something personal about her life. Soon, Peter finds himself in a field with 3 women standing with their mouths open, telling him how their children were taken from them. At that moment, young Carl arrives and shines light in his face with a mirror, so the investigator follows him. He reaches a room with a large bed in the center, where Catherine is wearing a lace dress and a mask on her face. He removes her mask and tells her this isn't the real world, but she ignores him. Suddenly, the demonic Carl arrives and puts a bag over Peter's head, causing him to pass out. Then, Peter wakes up to find himself tied up. Soon, the demonic Carl appears and starts cutting open his stomach and pulling out his intestines while Catherine watches and smiles. Peter, in desperation, tries to tell her this isn't real and reminds her of her younger brother who died in an accident. This sentence finally wakes Catherine and brings her back to consciousness. She drives an iron spike into the demon's back. After that, Peter and Catherine find themselves in another room with a water-filled cage in the center, with Julia floating inside. Next to them, they find young Carl. Catherine asks him to show them the location on the map. At the same time, Peter looks closely and notices a Carve Company logo on the tank, the same logo he saw in Carl's basement earlier. He says he knows Julia's location now and that they must leave, but Catherine promises young Carl they'll return to save him. Just as she finishes speaking, the demon arrives, takes the boy, and leaves. As soon as they return to reality, Peter immediately calls his team and asks them to find out everything about Carve Industrial Equipment, who used it, who bought it, and who sold it. The FBI team leaves the facility immediately. At the same time, Julia's cage starts filling with water, and she tries desperately to stay alive. Meanwhile, Dr. Henry notices Catherine preparing to enter Carl's mind again. He and the other doctors try to stop her, but she locks herself in the lab. Soon, Catherine finds herself wearing nun-like clothes and meets young Carl again. The boy tells her he wants to stay with her, but she says it doesn't work that way. Suddenly, the boy turns into adult Carl and tells her that once, when he was young, he found a bird with a broken leg. His father found out he was hiding it and would surely do something bad to it, so Carl drowned himself. Carl seems to hint that he wants her to kill him, but Catherine says she can't do that. Their conversation is interrupted when the demon suddenly arrives to attack them again. In another place, they get news that the tank was sold to a man building a factory, but the man went bankrupt and the state took the land. The shock is that they appointed Carl to lock up the place. When they arrive at the location, Peter feels hopeful and moves immediately with his team. Back in the dream world, Catherine starts fighting the demonic Carl and shoots him with arrows. At the same time, Julia is about to drown, and the police arrive and search the building but find nothing inside. Fortunately, Julia manages to break a pipe in the ceiling and breathes through it for a while, but it won't last long. In another place, Catherine stabs a sword into the demon's chest, but notices that the young boy is also injured. She realizes that the 2 personalities are one entity, and she can't kill one without the other dying too. She approaches the boy, who is drowning in his blood, begging her to save him and stay with him. At the same time, Peter notices a pipe around the building and follows it until he finds an opening leading to a basement. There, he finally sees the water-filled cage with Julia breathing through a tube. He tells her to swim away, then breaks the glass, causing all the water to flood the basement, and he saves Julia in the end. Back to Catherine. She is crying and drowns young Carl to end his suffering, thus finally eliminating the demon. In the real world, Carl has a seizure before dying, and his dog senses it and starts howling. Catherine also wakes up and breaks down crying. We see Julia crying in Peter's arms. The scene shifts to a few days later, where we see investigators searching Carl's basement, and Catherine arrives there. She wants to see the house, and we learn she adopted Valentine the dog. Peter and Catherine chat for a bit, and she tells him she plans to use a reverse technique to bring Edward into her mind. He worries about her, but she reassures him she'll be fine. Peter thanks her for everything, and then they part ways. In the final scene, we see Catherine and Edward in the desert from the beginning of the film, but this time the place around them is full of blooming trees, a sign that she finally managed to gain the boy's trust. This is the end of the film, and we'll meet in a new recap. Thanks for watching.